evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's meeting. London Borough of Newham Crime and Antisocial Scrutiny Commission. Can everyone present hear me? We have a Zoom link. Some members might wish to join us via Zoom. So I don't think I can see anyone via Zoom as yet. Okay. I know that you are present in the room, can hear me, obviously. Members joining physically at this location are able to join remotely, those who cannot join us physically here. However, they cannot vote, their vote will not be counted, and their attendance will not be formally recorded, though it will be recorded in the minutes. I would like to welcome members of the public and the press who are attending physically or watching via YouTube. With regards to meeting etiquette, members of the council, please can I ask that you indicate that you wish to speak by raising your physical hand or your virtual hand if you're in Zoom. Please can everyone be mindful of each other and please observe sensible etiquette regarding COVID. COVID is still with us, it hasn't gone away. So we need to be constantly mindful of COVID. And for this evening, the Scrutiny clerk is Roger Raymond, and he is in us. This meeting of the London Borough of Newham Crime and Antisocial Behaviour Scrutiny Commission is now called to order. So thank you all for your attendance coming to this meeting. The first item on the agenda is housekeeping one, and that is the election of vice chair. We've agreed on this commission to have myself as chair, and I've been elected many weeks ago. And now we'll be electing two vice chair. So looking at my colleagues, do I have any nominations for the two vice chair positions? Yeah.
Allowed to nominate Lewis Godfrey.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
I allow to nominate Councillor Jennifer.
Okay, and if you mind saying, because for the viewing public, who you are, so they know who's nominating who. Yeah.
I'm nominating Councillor Jennifer.
Thank you. So I have two nominations, Lewis Godfrey and Jennifer Bailey. Is there any other nominations? Since there's no other nomination and there's two positions vacant, those nominations are unopposed. So therefore, those two members are elected unopposed to the vice chair position. So congratulations, Councillor Bailey. Congratulations, Councillor Lewis. I look forward to working with you to make certain that Newham residents get a good deal. Our colleagues in front of me.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Right. So the next item is apologies for absence.
Hello, Chair. We've got apologies from Councillor Rush, Councillor Tell, and Councillor McWanna, and also Richard Arnold of the Fire Brigade. Unfortunately, this meeting.
Are those apologies noted?
Noted.
Okay, thank you. They are noted. Declaration of interest, item 4. Is there any member wishing to declare any interest? The clerk would note that no member wishes to declare any interest. Minutes of the previous meeting. Colleagues, this is our fourth formal meeting since the election. Although we met in July 19th, that meeting was not a formal meeting because of the heat wave and colleagues weren't able to all be here. So that was a meeting that was an informal meeting. We took it as an informal meeing. However, there are notes in your agenda pack. First of all, can we note notes? Is that noted?
Yeah, noted.
Okay.
Noted.
Now, the meeting held on Tuesday, the 15th of March, which was a formal meeting, and those minutes are here. So can I move that these are a true record of the proceedings on that day?
I'll second that.
And the record would reflect that Councillor Bailey second. The work program, that is our next item on the agenda. Again, colleagues, you are participating in this work program together. The item 6 on the agenda, it came in your agenda pack. At this stage, before we formally adopt it, does any member wish to comment on the work program? Yes, Councillor.
On page 28, it says possible second session, women and girls strategy and teams of work to keep women safe. It says possible second session. You know for sure that session will be going ahead with that topic?
Not at this stage, but it's something that we would be deciding as we go along. Depends on the workload. We already had some slippage, and that slippage because of the Queen's passing. So that already took away a session from us. This is just a catch-up session now. So we are, time is against us in this matter, but depends on how much we get done. So it's there for consideration, and I'm sure you will keep reminding me that something that we should get in and the work program. Thank you. Any other, and colleagues, when you are speaking, because we didn't do a formal introduction for the first time, so members of the public. Yeah. And because we didn't do a formal introduction, again, for the officers and Councillor Parkway, if you introduce yourself the first time you speak. Okay. Thank you. So can I ask that we agree that this is our formal work program for this municipal year? Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. Now, I will read it for time, so that's 12 minutes to do that. So that gives us more time to ask questions. Now, the next item on our agenda is item 7. I've introduced the item and for the officer to identify who is going to be taking this item, etc. And also, Councillor Lee Parkway may want to have a few opening remarks. Colleagues, and for the viewing public, this item is to enable this commission to consider the crime and antisocial behaviour scrutiny. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong item. Sorry, right. Yes. The paper that we have before us that was published beforehand intends to inform scrutiny members of the current structure and officer resource within the Community Safety and Enforcement Office, and to provide an update in response to specific manifesto commitment on increasing community safety officers' resource. Basically, this is manifesto commitment in terms of increasing community resource. This is to talk about the structure and the resource in the team. And I now ask Councillor Lee Parkway and our team to introduce themselves and who will be leading on this item.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, before I go into my substance, just thank you for having us here this evening, Chair and members. I am Councillor Carleen Lee Parkway, Cabinet Member for Crime and Community Safety, and I have with me today one of my officers, Gary Connors, Assistant Director for Community Safety, and also our partners, that being Chief Inspector Mike O'Donoghue and also Superintendent Alex Kay, who will be able to add any additional answers to questions posed this evening. So just before I go into why we're here, I think it's important for me to just acknowledge where we are and why we're here. Crime and Community Safety is an important directorate and it's a service area in which all residents in Newham expect to be delivered in a proactive way. So we're here today to discuss with you the documents contained within our pack around enforcement and community safety. Chair, I'm not going to go on to any more. We'll divvy out the questions accordingly as and when they're asked, but I trust that everybody has read the documents. I don't want to reiterate what it is that you've already read, and we are ready to take questions.
Okay. Thank you. Does any of officer want to add any comments to what Councillor said?
No, Chair, just to say, obviously, as Councillor Backwards introduced me, I'm Gary Connors, I'm Assistant Director of Community Safety. As my cabinet leader said, we've tried to set out in the paper sort of an idea of the structure that we do have and obviously plans we have going forward. This is a piece of work specifically on the 2 manifesto commitments about increasing the number of council community safety enforcement officers across the next 4 years and the antisocial behaviour officer across the next 4 years. The paper we put together has tried to set out what it looks like now and what we plan to do. Some of this is being embedded now, some will be embedded as we go across the next couple of years. The one point I would say in there, and you will have read it, councillor colleagues, was the manifesto talks about the commitment talks about community safety enforcement officers who do have quite a specific piece of work and antisocial behaviour officers who do with ASB. What we tried to address in here as well is this actually a bit of a widening and a restructure going forward. We'll look at the wider service. We're also a service that's responsible for dealing with hate crime, modern day slavery, women's safety issues, integrated offender management, violent crime. So there's a whole range of sort of resource we're looking in the round in a sense. So it's not just those areas, but I know they're the 2 very specific manifesto commitments. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I ask, on page of our agenda, big 37, the chart, the organization chart here, I think it gives us some numbers in some of the boxes. For instance, at the bottom of the first chart, there are 4 by CCTV and data operators. You have 5 by CCTV data operation. Again, okay, that is under different. So one of the things that I would ask you to consider when you are answering our questions is how many enforcement staff, because this is about resource, so on. So if you could consider and give us an idea of the number of resources you have at your disposal. So I won't say any more on that. I'll hand over to my colleagues. And I recognize Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Sean Morris. I'm the councillor for Plaza West and Cannock East, and I'm a member of this committee. Something has caught my attention where on page 36 says that following a community restructure.
I'm raising your voice a bit. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Following a community safety service restructure in 2019, we saw a reduction in officer numbers. And it also mentioned somewhere else in the report that it wasn't implemented until 2021. I could be wrong on that. I guess my question is, and it also says later on that you plan on recruiting more officers. I guess my question is, what was the rationale behind that reduction in the first place? And then if it was implemented, how many officers did we lose?
Sorry? Yeah, I can come in first of all. Council, thank you. It's a good question. Apologies, I wasn't there, so I didn't implement the initially, and I think my cabinet lead might have some background on that as well. I didn't, because I think it was a restructure prior to what I was looking at here today and what we look at going forward. I didn't have the numbers for those reductions, so I can get those for you outside. But it's essentially we went from it was somewhere near about 65 officers down to just under 30 across enforcement and antisocial behaviour. It was a reduction at the time right across the whole service, so officers across all areas, and it was restructured. It was a saving of 1.4 million.
And do you know what was the rationale behind that decision?
Did you want to come in, Councillor? I think it was essentially he was looking at structures right across the authority in the structure in the business case document for the restructure. It was structures right across the authority, and they were looking at rationalising a range of directors. I think it was a whole shake-up across the council directorates. And that added to the.
I appreciate, okay, so go on. Then.
So just to clarify, Councillor Morris, so in regards to the restructure that took place at that point, the whole council was being restructured at that time. So therefore, there were that hit every single area in which the council covers. And in regards to your initial question in regards to implementation, it was implemented at that point in 2021 because we was hit with COVID. So therefore, business was not as usual. And so that was the right time in which we was able to do that implementation. But overall, it was the whole council went through a process of restructure under the governance and the Towards a Better Newham corporate plan that we was being delivered on.
Chair, I just have one follow-up question.
Yes, you may.
I probably know the answer to this because it says it in a lot of the report, but I just would like you to confirm it. What has changed since January 2021 and now that, since the manifesto was created, that changed that decision?
Or certainly for me, as the assistant director, having come in, obviously I came in, I reviewed the structures we have, I reviewed the amounts of cases we have. I think, if I'm honest, councillor, you know, there was a decision made in 2019 post-COVID, and as Councillor Pathway said, it was right across a whole council structure, and it would have been thought through in that way. There would have been a business case as to why that structure was made. We didn't foresee COVID. I worked in another authority at the time. Our noise cases went up probably double, if not triple, across COVID, as the same in London and across the UK. ASB cases went up as well. A lot of very specific issues around domestic abuse, etc. Having said that, those numbers some have come down coming out of COVID. Some have stayed quite high, and as you would probably imagine, and it's probably another meeting where we might discuss crime levels, but violent crimes then gone up that had gone down, street crime, because there was nobody on the streets and there's police officers, sort of guarding our streets with people behind closed doors. So there's fluctuation in crime. I've looked at the figures that we've had coming in. I've looked at the ASB cases we've had coming in. I'll be honest, we struggle at the moment as a service with the numbers we've had. We've started to recruit some this month actually, or just gone in September. But we reviewed what we had there. We've reviewed not only our enforcement numbers and our capacity to deal with those numbers in the service, but also, as I mentioned, I suppose at the outset of my sort of opening remarks here tonight, that we didn't have resources that focused on hate crime specifically. We didn't have resources that focused on women's safety. Those issues that we're now seeing, again, some of it coming out of COVID, some of it were there already pre-COVID, that really are our key concerns. And so to try and focus our officers in that way and focus them more on problem-solving methodology, I think it's more how I suppose we can pull our officers together in the round. And essentially, I've made the cases, and certainly backed by my cabinet lead, I've made the cases to my own corporate director that we need more resource in this area due to the crime figures.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, it's a question, but I know it was before the both of you time, but we had a review. We've moved from 65 to 30. We have a structure them, I think it was my colleague was alluding. And then now we're saying that we're going to increase, and I'm reading from the manifesto commitment, so increase the number of council community safety enforcement officers over the next 4 years to tackle crime and antisocial behaviour on the street, environment crime such as lighting, etc. And the next bullet point says, increase the number of antisocial behaviour officers to respond to nuisance neighbours, noise, and tackle ASB, hotspots, etc. I'm sure these existed before. Yeah. So how sound and how robust was the review and the restructure that we did? So we just done it, got rid of one of those officers, and now, soon after, realized, wow, we need to up them again. And then we have an upward projection, and you just said you started to recruit again. So it wasn't that. It seems to me as a waste of time. You're doing something, we don't need all of those people. You got rid of them, and I suppose some of them would have been experienced people. And then now you're going to go and recruit to tackle the same problems. But it's not new to Newham, always been there. And I suppose for a long time would be here. So how robust was that?
Thank you, Chair. And respectfully, I would, I can't at this point talk for my predecessor as to why those decisions were made. However, I can talk to why the decisions have been made now in regards to the manifesto that we now are working on and towards. And I guess a big part of the decisions going forward is we need to change and be as agile as we possibly can as a business in order to respond to the needs of our communities. So with saying that, so we obviously, we've had COVID for 2.5 years. That changed the way in which the hearts and minds of residents are. We, as an administration, have identified and acknowledged the needs of our community in relation to the state of the borough and how it is that we move around and so on and so forth. So I think going forward, I know you want an answer. I can't give you the answer that you're looking for, and I would not be able to give you that answer because I was not the person that made those changes. However, and so nor was my assistant director. However, what I would say, Chair, is that nothing is ever set in stone. We need to move with the times. We need to move with the level of needs. So therefore, we have identified in the Building the Fair and Newer manifesto that the need to enable residents to feel safe in this borough and to live in a cleaner borough is one of our priorities. And therefore, that's why we have a clear commitment to doing that in the manifesto.
Okay, thank you. Scrutiny, our role is to identify and to see where the council might have got it right and got it wrong. So you've just done some months ago a restructure, and now you're doing another one. So we need to learn lessons, but so that whatever might have gone wrong then, we do not make the same mistakes. And I know you weren't there, and I won't hold that against you. It wasn't you, but can we find out the rationale behind that and what might have gone wrong? And I know you mentioned COVID, and that doesn't pass me. I understand that, and we understand that. But is there anything that we can learn? And one of the reasons I'm asking this because we are constantly restructuring. Just need to get it right. Okay.
Can I just respond to that, Chair? Because I think just having been in this position now and having read over the papers of the previous commission, a lot of this stuff was actually dealt with in the previous commission under the recommendations that came from that. So in the recommendations from the previous commission, it talks about a need to increase enforcement officers according to need. And so obviously as a service area, we're doing what it is that we've been asked to in your recommendations. More important, we're doing what we've been asked to by the public. And I do appreciate what you said in regards to let's make sure the restructures are the right restructures at the right time. Please, let's just go back to the restructure was done in 2019. I appreciate it wasn't implemented in 2001, but that was because of COVID. It still had to take place. Actually, that's what the process was at that time. What I can guarantee to you is that whatever I do in this forum as the cabinet member for this space, that I will make sure that every consideration is taken before making any type of decisions on workforce going forward.
Good. Please, that you mentioned that you listened to the recommendation of this committee, although it was in a former life, and you've increased it as a result of our recommendation. So thank you very much. Councillor Godfrey.
So, Councillor Godfrey, Green Street West. Guys, thank you for the papers. I'm looking particularly at page 37 because I really love organograms. I think they're brilliant. I think it's just such a good way of getting information across. And I think what you've given me here is the existing operating model. So where's the target operating model?
It's being designed, councillor. Part of, and again, apologies, it's in narrative and not an organogram in the next page. What we've done is only over the past month, we have increased our ASB officers. So that side of this has changed. I'm still looking through the structures of our CCTV to see if there's any changes there. Part of what we're doing and part of the idea of the manifesto commitment going forward is to review right across my service. And I was going to come on to the chair's question in a second about effectively, this isn't replacing what was there existing. It's doing it differently, doing it smarter. We've invested in analysts where we're trying to do this a lot smarter on how we set up the teams. We will have one of these going forward because I'll be putting together a business case shortly to look at how we structure my service going forward. But essentially, the idea of going forward now is we've got, and it says in the paper there as well, we've got an external contracts supporting us now of Kingdom LAS officers that are supporting us that now sit with a dotted line. What I need to now do is review through my structures. I've looked at the ASB, I've got extra enforcement officers in, but what I want to do is focus more around that problem solving piece and how we structure the service around that. And that I need to look at an internal restructure to do that, see if we've got the officers in the right place. And essentially we'll come back with that at the time. What I didn't mention earlier, part of this as well, and this is something that came out, I think, in 2018. We don't have an out-of-hours tasking team, so we don't have an out-of-hours noise service.
Say that again, I didn't.
So we don't have an out-of-hours tasking team. So as you're probably all aware as members, we don't have an out-of-hours noise service, which, you know, just doesn't frustrate yourselves any more than me. You know, it is really difficult. But those out-of-hours officers that I believe we've had in the past, and some other councils, the way to use them, you know, we can also respond to issues of with police colleagues of some of the prostitution, sex work, issues of fly tipping at night, because people fly tip at night, you know, pick up those issues around our town centres, around our business premises, licence premises. So it is, what I'm trying to do, I just met with all my staff again yesterday on this, is try to, within my structures, look at how we can develop a service that we can have some of our teams working at night time, some of them working in the day.
Okay, and that sounds like a really, really admirable aim. Do you have any schedule for getting that target operating model in place, and then any schedule for when you expect this new model to be in place by? Because one of the things that I like to tell my residents is that there's an action plan, there's a way forward, and we've got it really charted.
Yeah, for actual numbers, councillor, not yet. And I'm also, you know, we're
Do you know when?
in a sense, for the response to the public, I want to have something in place. Certainly, looking at an out-of-hours noise service, I want to have something for Christmas. I want to start working in that way. How I restructure my team is obviously going to be also based on our funding across the authority, our funding from partners. I'm discussing with housing colleagues how we can look to fund these services, how we benefit those services, and how I can look at funding this better. The part of the out-of-hours service, I want to maybe trial something by Christmas if I can. Essentially, the actual service I want residents to get shouldn't be dependent on how I structure my team, in a sense. I want to start to develop some of that, but to get you the actual structure in place, hopefully I can give you something that you could give residents, to give them some assurance, and we can get something on the website that we're changing to respond to things like noise nuisance, etc. But to give you something in organogram to show the numbers of staff, I'd be looking at probably post-Christmas, probably the start of the new financial year.
Thank you. And Chair, I have two more very quick questions. And I'll ask them simultaneously and perhaps you can address them simultaneously.
Please.
So the first is, looking at this organogram, it seems to me, I'm an expert, that there's not a lot of managerial capacity. How are you deciding whether or not there are enough managers to enough staff? How do you make that judgment? And then one thing, you alluded to it earlier, we're in a really difficult situation with finances. I don't think anybody doesn't think we are. You're in this process now where you're going to take on a lot of new people, and that's going to be a big financial challenge, I assume. So to what extent are we putting in place a target operating model that is fit to fix the problems that new residents have? How much is that constricted by the difficult financial situation? And that, and finally, more questions. And finally, what are you doing to mitigate that financial problem? How are you working innovatively and interestingly and differently to make sure that you can get the most for the least?
Yeah. So I'll just come in regards to your last question regarding how we get most for the least. So from point of view of a one council approach, we're looking at ways in which we can fund various parts of our directorate through money that's existing within the council. Now, nothing is actually set in stone yet. We have to wait to the end of the year for the final cut-offs of the accounts. But I think what we're trying to do is use the money that we have in a better way, so be efficient with the money that we have. You noticed earlier on that we spoke about the additional staff that we do have is an enhanced piece of work with our service area. But I think going back to the budget, how we're managing that money, I'm not going to lie to you, money's tight. We know that money's tight, but we're not yet. I haven't got the figures to give to you as it currently stands, and that will come in due course. That will come through a different process. But what I would say is that we are being very diligent in what it is that we're doing, making sure that every single pound that we spend is accounted for and that we're not over-promising and under-delivering. So for us, we need to just make sure that we are doing what we can do within the remit that we have, but we're still working out that detail. I can't say to you, Councillor Godfrey, that this is how much it's going to cost and this is how many officers I'm going to give you. What I would say also, just to go back to one of the previous questions you asked, Councillor Godfrey, in relation to time spans, the manifesto commitment is 4 years. Now, I appreciate 4 years may seem too long, but what I can guarantee to you is that we will have a service, for instance, a noise nuisance service in the coming months. But I can't give you exact timings as of yet because we need to. Yeah, the out of hours service. I can't give you exact timings as of yet, but I am more than willing to bring that back at another future meeting to make sure that you can then reassure your residents.
Thanks very much.
But your officer, Gary, have given us a time. I've written there for when I'm coming up. He says out of our service by Christmas. So you have given us a time. So I'm going to be holding, Councillor, you and your officer to by Christmas.
With due respect, Councillor McAlmont, I'm a cabinet member. So therefore, I will decide as to when the budget restraints for that is possible. It may be Christmas, it may not be, but what I can guarantee is it will be a service.
Yeah, but we just aired by Christmas. So we were asking to air by Christmas. I, for one, and to get that out dash now is not a good place to be. I know you will try your best, I hope.
If I may, Chair, to clarify, I think I want to have something certainly trialled by Christmas. I want to have something in place by the start of the new financial year.
That's reassuring to know.
Yeah.
And it's our commitment because it makes our job easier and supporting the residents easier if we had that in place as well.
Yeah.
To go back to Councillor Godfrey's questions, the management structure, Councillor Godfrey, absolutely is part of what I've been able to look at when I restructured the team. There's a lot of support from HR colleagues about how we manage numbers of staff to managers and team leaders, etc. It's always generally in any council I've ever worked in, it's generally between 6 and 8 people to a manager. Heads of service wise, I'm in conversations with my cabinet lead as well to look at how we deliver the heads of service work. So I've got a head of service that currently you'll see from the organogram that covers emergency planning and community safety. I've got a community safety manager that effectively works at that almost head of service level, driving a whole lot of work that didn't exist when I arrived, and we're developing this quite widely. You may well all be aware as councillors, emergency planning in Newham is a beast in itself. We have so much work on it. I think we do it brilliantly, personally. I think we do is amazing. We stand up a borough emergency control centre that works it really well. I personally think that needs to be driven, financial constraints aside, by a head of service driving that work, really proactive work. What we look at, we were just talking today about how we can support our communities around Eid with some better emergency planning stand up around those major events that happen in the borough. So I think for me, there is something about looking at head of service level. And again, apologies, it's really small writing and I apologise for that. But where we have senior officers, we've got 4 senior officers across our environmental enforcement officers, or the community safety enforcement officers, and we've gone from 1 manager and 1 senior and now 2 seniors in the ASB team. I think that's quite healthy. In councils I've worked in, there's a decent level of senior management, and we've got some really good, they're at PO7 level, that middle management level, just above those under the heads of service, and it works quite well for me. I think I just need to see, is there almost this sort of a split in what you'll see in a future organogram, hopefully when it's finished, is something where there's a really strong community safety service, which now has an integrated offender management in there, who I've taken from another part of council, has a violence reduction coordinator. There's a couple of other bits in there. So absolutely, it's in the forefront of my mind that I need to have that management structure. And if I'm very honest, and from a very professional, personal side of things, I need that management structure under me. I need some senior people under me to be able to delegate out some of the meetings that we go to. On the financial challenge side of it, and my cabinet members has led on that answer, I would say the financial challenge. I've spent most of my career, and certainly the last 10 years of it, in a very difficult climate. I think I'm quite adept, and I work very closely with my colleagues across housing, across adults, across children's, to look at where we can see synergies, where I can identify sources of funding where we support colleagues. We support a lot of colleagues in housing with a lot of issues, whether it's the LBN housing or the licensing scheme housing side of it. And so I think there's some more negotiation there about how we can beef those sides up. And there's a lot of really good work with Councillor Mohammed around the estate busters that we do together. Essentially, there are financial challenges. I don't think we can certainly create more money. So I need to identify where those sources are and we can better synergies. Sorry, Chair.
Okay. Right, Councillor Shantu. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then yourself after.
My question will be according to page number 38. Before go to 38, I'm going to give you some data from Met Police. So for East Ham Wood, constantly we are listening and we are observing the residents struggling with antisocial behaviour, crime and theft. And also we have on here from Met Police report, violence and sexual offences 39 last in July in East Ham, antisocial behaviour 30 in East Ham in July, and vehicle crime 19, criminal damage and erosion, criminal damage is 9. So
Sorry, Councillor.
sorry,
Are you reading from a page?
this is just data from Met Police.
Are we on the different paper? I think it's different paper, Councillor.
No, I'm coming. So I'm coming to, according to that, I'm coming to page number 38. So
trying to be helpful.
page number 38, the manifesto promise for 4 years, increase the number of the council's community safety enforcement officer over the next 4 years to tackle ASB on our street, environmental crimes such as fly tipping, enforce public space protections order when they are breached. And also on the manifesto is been promised antisocial behaviour officer will be recruited, and also will be produced more CCTV cameras. So I know it's a 4 years plan, but my question to you, over the last 6 months since January, or over the last since May, how many officers or enforcement officer we have recruited last couple of months?
Thank you, Councillor.
Before you answer the question, it would be helpful if, I know you quoted some statistics, and I suppose you got those statistics from within the council. So it would be helpful if you let us know where you're quoting that from, because it could maybe be statistical figures that you already are aware of, or so on.
It's Met Police data.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think you said that. Thank you. Yeah, Councillor, absolutely. So going back, and again, I think I've got it on the next page. So essentially from the community safety enforcement officers, there are two elements of that. One, we've got more officers on the street through our externally supported contract. We have 13 new officers on the street on a daily basis, and they're enforcing. Their focus is around enforcing around littering, fly tipping. We're starting to do some work around our commercial waste as well with those. So that's extra officers from that community safety enforcement side, which not only I would suggest gives hopefully more reassurance to the community, and there's more enforcement work going on where there are perpetrators, but actually it frees up some of my officers that were kind of doing it all previously to do some other work. So we do a lot of work around for everything from, again, fly tipping waste to abandoned vehicles, blue badge checks, there's a whole range of stuff that we do, which I can come back and give it a whole idea of all the work. So there's that side of it. And the other side, I think when I answered Councillor Godfrey's question a moment ago, over the course of the next year, I'm looking to review my service to see how we take what are some area-based officers, some enforcement officers, and create more enforcement officers internally. So that's on the first one. On the second one, we have already gone from 5 antisocial behaviour officers and 1 senior ASB officer to 12 officers and 2 senior officers in the last couple of weeks. So we've already hired those as of last month.
Okay, can I respond if you don't mind? So just in relation to some of the statistics that you just read off, and I guess what I understand in your question to be in regards to the wider picture around violence against women, domestic violence and antisocial behaviour. And I would maybe like to bring in our police colleagues. What we are doing as a directorate is what we can do as our directorate in regards to the enforcement that we have. However, we do work hand in glove with our police partners in order to be able to deal with that holistic view around crime and how it affects our communities. So maybe I'll pass over to our police colleagues who may be able to speak to the issues around violence against women, domestic violence, and the other questions that you were asking.
Yeah, so certainly. Alex Kelly, Superintendent for Neighbourhoods. So I've just recently arrived on the borough, and for me, I think that we have a really good relationship with the local authority, with Councillor Colleen, in order to having a joined up approach to work on these priorities. So for the Metropolitan Police Service, violence against women and girls is one of our key priorities. For your local neighbourhood officers, I've spoken and met with the local neighbourhood officers. I've tasked them in 3 areas. First of all is around trust and confidence, because we know as an organisation there is concerns about trust and confidence in the police. So what I'm asking officers to do is to engage more, to be more visible, and actually get back to some traditional policing around knowing who your local officer is. That, in a sense as well, feeds into violence against women and girls, because if people see officers on the street, if people know they're visible, then people are going to feel safer. The second area I'm asking to look at is long-term problem solving. And that is to look at each ward area and actually what are the specific issues on our ward. Now, if we've got something like antisocial behaviour, what do we mean by antisocial behaviour? So it can be anything. Sometimes it'll just be some young people hanging around on the street corner that's actually upsetting residents, perhaps being a little bit noisy. It might not be doing anything at all. It could just actually be there. And that's where we need to take a problem-solving approach from that, and not actually just criminalise young people and say, you can't be here, but actually try and get into it. Are they committing crime? Are they part of some gang? Is there something bigger going on? Or actually, is it young people we know are staying out and they need a youth club, they need diverting into some of the youth provisions? We've got some fantastic youth provisions and some wonderful work in that. And even something like putting a youth shelter in an area away from where perhaps they're congregating, which is, I don't know if you've seen this as things like, it's like a bus shelter, but you put it for young people to actually go and sit in rather than actually hanging around in stairwells or whatever. So that's the second area. And the third one is around that professionalism, around professional standards and making sure we're investigating our crimes properly and ensuring that actually we're providing that support to members of the public when they call the phone and want to know who the local officer is. That is my drive. We started doing that. We had training day last week at a local mosque in. And again, part of that as well is we could go to a football club, we could go to cinema, but how do we connect with our community? How are we going to make those connections? So we're using faith venues. We've got to faith venue, and that way you get to meet people, get to know people. We're seen to be visible. And I want a training day every 4 months where we're actually in different venues, actually getting to know. In terms of violence against women and girls, there's been a complete thorough package that's been done on it. An awful lot of time has been spent on it. It's actually improving the position. I think we never stop improving. And actually, I'm going to hand over now to Mick. And the reason why I'm going to hand to Mick is not because I'm kind of trying to put him on the spot, but actually he is actually led a lot of our work on violence against women and girls.
Can I, before give some direction in terms of timing, I'm hoping to conclude this bit in about 13 minutes. So can I actually not be more than 2 minutes because I have other members to come in before, and there's only one question that's taking so long.
Sorry, Chair.
I'm not saying the question that is deserve a detailed answer, but can we make it a bit more substantial? Thank you.
So, Nick O'Donoghue, Chief Inspector, Neighbourhood Police. In terms of violence against women and girls, as the boss says, priority for the Met, and rightly so, it's well publicised. That is the case. There is an awful lot of work that has been done in terms of our position within performance around reducing violence against women and girls and increasing confidence. Newham sit proudly at #1 within the Met. Now, that's not for us to be complacent around that. I know there are issues, specific issues in certain hotspot areas within the borough. One of them is East Ham. And there is a lot of work being done around that. Gary Connors, myself worked particularly around some of the issues around street sex workers towards the north end of East Ham area around Manor Park. That's ongoing. We've had real success in that area about supporting women out of the sex trade and also the environment for the local residents. The same is that there are issues around East Ham that we are looking at and we are working on in relation to engaging with women's groups to understand where they feel unsafe, looking at, as the boss said, designing out crime, looking at long-term problem-solving issues. And that is a piece of work that is ongoing. So, but I recognise that there are issues, particularly within East Ham, And we've identified that, and we look forward to work with our partners and the community about reducing that. But we have had some success, but we are not being complacent around that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Indeed, and the next person that I have is Councillor Raymond.
Thanks, Chair. My name is Councillor Imam, and I'm Councillor from East Town. And my question is related to page number 36 and 37.
Can you speak up a bit? I can't hear you.
Sorry?
Speak up a bit, please.
Sorry. My question is related to page number 36 and 37, point number 2 and 3. Where we have listed the number of offices there. And I can understand from number 5, and obviously previously you have answered my Councillor Shantu about the numbers will be increasing over the next 4 years. So my question is that, do we have any data in terms of how many officers we are deploying ward-wise?
Sorry, Councillor, how many officers were deploying ward-wise?
Ward-wise.
No, we had in the previous structures that were talked about earlier, there were ward-specific officers. When we had a lot more officers, there were ward-specific officers. In the restructure that came into place just before I came in, they had split that into a number of officers that covered 3 wards each. If I'm honest, they've been stretched from what I've seen since I came in. I think it's quite difficult. What I want to work and look at in the structure in a way, and this won't be laid out in that structure because I want to try and keep the job descriptions as generic as I can so we can mix and match and put officers where the most need is. But what I would like is that we start to look at areas of most concern. So we will develop, and again, we've got some really good analysts. We work closely with Mick and Alex and other police colleagues to look at, and we meet on a weekly basis to look at those areas of most concern. And if it is things like, it's easy to say, you won't be surprised about Meridian Square, Stratford Town Centre, big issues there. There are other issues in different estates across the borough, other town centres. It is to try and send those officers out to those areas of most need. So we don't, we don't necessarily record where all of our officers go. We go out to our need. We task officers on a daily basis. They respond to their own casework as well. So we don't necessarily, I suppose, have any data that times how much they've done in wards. But what we certainly try to do, and it's a piece of work that Councillor Packer has been driving, is meeting with you all as ward councillors to identify the issues in your area on a sort of a you asked, we said scenario. So hopefully we'll start to come back to the issues that you pick up. You'll see this officer resource put into that, and then again with council colleagues, police colleagues, with housing colleagues, children's colleagues as well. But essentially, Councillor, no, we don't dedicate officers to wards.
Follow-up question. Thank you, Chair. So I've got 2 more questions. One is...
It's a bit much you have for the members to bring in, but I'll allow you one for now.
Go to the other one, which is, okay, what do we deploy enforcement officers, or let's say do enforcement officers visit private estates?
There is yes is the answer, but there is also a mixture of our linking in with our housing colleagues. And some housing colleagues that work around design around crime, and tenancy enforcement officers that work in specific areas. But absolutely, we do, and we do it with S&T police colleagues and some response police colleagues as well. Yes is a simple answer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I am Councillor Morris, then yourself.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned earlier when you were answering my colleague's question you mentioned Kingdom Local Authority support. So this is my first time as a councillor and a commissioner, but especially on ASB. So I'm not aware of the involvement of contractors within antisocial behaviour enforcement. So I guess my question is, what is the function of these contractors, and what's the cost implication to that? So is it a temporary award, and you're going to hire officers to replace this contractor when you have that capacity, or is it an ongoing thing? And what's also the boundaries, the powers that they have to enforce?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So they are
from the back of that before. Are you referring to the Kingdom contract?
I'm referring to the actual local authority and involvement in antisocial enforcement.
Yeah, because the reason why I'm asking that, because I want to ask a question and for you to talk to us about that. So if you tie the 2 up, answer it and then tie that up. Thank you.
Absolutely, Chair. I think I understand that. Yeah. Yeah, Councillor, absolutely. I mean, first of all, it's an enhanced service, so it's externally. It's not costing the authority. It's on a cost neutral basis. So whatever they will take money back from fixed penalty notices they would issue, which pays for their service. It gives us an enhanced service in that way. There is a there is a sharing basis on the income that came in. We will take some of their income as well as they come in because we delegate them the authority. What I would say is they're not, and apologies if I've written it or given an impression, they're not enforcement officers around antisocial behaviour. They're enforcement officers specifically to do with littering. That they're a company, they're employed by a number of other boroughs across London, and they focus very specifically on enforcement around littering. So they're officers on the street watching when people literally throw litter on the ground, and they find them immediately. They've got body worn cameras, etc. They're not that longer term problem solving antisocial behaviour. They don't work on estates, they don't work on noise nuisance and ASB issues and that. So they're delegated authority through the council based on Environmental Protection Act and on essentially on people who litter. That's specifically their job. We've employed them, we've commissioned them, sorry, on an 18-month contract, an 18-month pilot to hopefully, as a proof of concept that it is something that it's good to continue with, and essentially we'll continue the contract as an enhanced contract, but also at the same time, across that 18 months, as I mentioned earlier, we are looking to restructure my service anyway to see what we can do across the service. At the moment, they're working well. We're getting some good returns. We've got some really good feedback from the community that they see officers on the street, they feel supported, and that's had a knock-on effect to feelings of safety. We need to measure all that. I'm not saying everyone feels suddenly safe, but we've had some good feedback coming on it.
Just one follow-up on question number. What safeguards are there in place to make sure they're not overusing their power to earn more income than they would necessarily have to?
Sorry?
Shall I?
Yeah.
So just in relation, so I asked a lot of these questions in the beginning before this contract was actually went live. And so one of the main safeguards of that is actually body worn cameras. Every single officer has a body worn camera, and we're able to challenge any enforcement ticket that's been given to any resident. So that's the main way in which we can ensure that they are above reproach. What I would say also to that is that they're a professional company, and that they're providing a service. A big part of that is about communication between us as me as cabinet member to my officers in regards to that constant dialogue between them and us, making sure that at no point in time that is breached. So so they are the main ways. I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah, the question has been answered because I think I've got a satisfactory answer there. So sorry, I need to move on. So can Councillor Falola.
My name is Femi Falola from Eastern Councillor. I believe from what you've been saying all along that you collaborate with the police as well. This is what we find out going on the street, speaking to businesses. Some of them come out and said, look, the same camera that's going to give a fine to a cab driver who ran, the same camera will not, there won't be any information from the same camera on how somebody purse, wallet, phone were nicked. I mean, I know the camera might belong to council or the police. Do you share information within each other? Just to go forward.
What you've been told is correct, Councillor. There are three types of cameras you'll see on the street. There are cameras, so I run the CCTV service as well as part of my service. So those cameras are your public realm cameras. They're on your main thoroughfares, your main roads, not always down estates, etc. I, for one, don't think we all want cameras on every street, but, they're in some of the prime locations in the streets, and we will always review that. And we also have a cache of mobile cameras that we would use for ASB spots, fly tipping, etc. There's a second set of cameras that is run by our parking services. And so they're on our streets. They're looking at your low traffic networks, your safer school streets, etc. So they will deal with very specifically with parking infractions. There is a third set of cameras which is Transport for London. They'll pick up cameras going into red routes. So they're Transport for London. They're not ours at all. They're obviously TfL cameras across London. So there's three types of cameras. We would share information on a very regular basis. We obviously with the police all the time. Police can tie into our cameras through their operational ops room. So we can transmit our footage directly to them, any cameras they want to see, obviously all done under the Information Commissioner's agreement, and they get downloads from footage from us all the time as well. So we interact with the police all the time. We clearly, I would hope you'd imagine, interact with our parking colleagues and our highways and parking team. So we do talk to them, but the cameras are in a very separate system, and we're looking for not looking for the wrong word, we're identifying separate things. So we're picking up different fines. Transport for London can be difficult sometimes. We often piggyback the same sort of poles, or we got cameras in the same area, and it can be confusing, but they cover the red routes. But we do talk to Transport for London quite a bit as well.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry, because of the time constraints upon us, it's now 8 o'clock by my time. So, Councillor Mercy, you've had a fair go. I'm bringing Councillor Lewis, Guthrie, and then I think that's it, because I have a few questions. So I do need to recognise myself. Guthrie, and then.
It's a shame with these timings, because I'm still sure we could be here all day. I've got like 4 questions which I haven't had time to ask, but that's okay. Just very quickly, Superintendent Kay and Chief Inspector O'Donoghue. We were asking a couple of questions about their methodology, but also about this target operating model, which I've clearly got in my head. It's so good that you guys are working together so closely. Have you had any thoughts or input into that?
I'll say that, to be fair, we had informal inputs, because we have conversations quite regularly. So I've met Tony, Gary, and Councillor Colleen. So we have conversations and we feed into it, but I've not actually sort of put something on pen and paper. But I think we have that kind of very good relationship anyway, where it's not, we don't really communicate by email. We must and have a chat and have a conversation. What I will say as well is, don't forget, you've got the police team that's actually embedded within Building 1000 as well.
Sorry, say that again, I missed it.
You've got a funded police team that are in Building 1000 as well. So you have a police inspector there, and they're actually co-located. So they're actually joined up together on a daily basis, talking about where the issues are, where they're going to prioritise. And we have something else as well, the TEG, which is the Tasking Enforcement Group, where actually we look at it on a fortnightly basis, look at all the priorities, and actually decide which is the best resource to go to it. So that's already exists in that.
But in terms of just the very specific question, you haven't had formal input into or you won't have formal input into the target operating model.
No, that's right. And I think as well, we've got to respect the fact that actually this is a decision for the council to consider. It's going to give out the budgets, the operating environment. Those are areas as well that, as a sort of a police, we wouldn't necessarily interfere with. We can provide advice and support, but I think what we can provide, we already give anyway in that conversation. So it's not something, I don't think it wouldn't be our business, shall I say. We might be actually.
Sure.
We won't be experts in it.
It just occurs to me that you guys are working so closely together in a lot of what you're doing, it might be useful. But if it's not, then.
If I may, Chair, I mean, absolutely, I would expect that once we've come to it, and it would have been previously there as well. I think as Mr. Kay is saying, I suppose there's no formal process for them. Absolutely, when I restructure a service, I'll be feeding it to police colleagues, because, you know, we and just one quick example of that is, you know, we both struggle a bit with the out of hours noise service stuff. So a case will come in, it's not so much a 999 call, it's like a noise nuisance case. We don't have a council service on. We'd also then probably argue, you know, because we don't have a service on, we need police colleagues. So we're constantly looking, and police colleagues challenge us. When I speak to Mick on a weekly basis, he challenges me as to the services we can interact. So I would absolutely, any structure we have, I'd be looking to see if police colleagues were au fait with it, and if they were quite happy with what we're trying to do.
Okay, a quick question on the Kingdom contract. Obviously, when you enter that contract, you have certain objectives. Are those objectives being met? Are you pleased with progress so far?
Definitely.
Yeah. Yes, Chair. And I was going to say, and I know you stopped us because you were happy with the response to the question. The thing I would say, just to answer you and probably some previous questions, okay, I have an officer in my team that meets with the external contractor on a weekly basis, just for problem solving, to see how things are going. We have a monthly review around the data they collect. So again, as Councillor County and Packman said, there's body worn cameras, so we see all that work. We expected them to be visible on the streets. We expected them to basically to try and drive down our litter offences, our reports of litter. That will have to be seen as we go down in 6 months, 12 months, etc. But absolutely, I think they're meeting the objectives we've set now.
Okay, so I know and most of the times the people that are using Eastham, for instance, will be the same sort of people. So hopefully, as they find these people learn and start improving and stop doing what they're doing. And if people stop doing what they're doing, then the income would be reduced. Yeah. Because people are not re-offending, etc. So I take it that you've catered for all of that.
Yeah. Yes, Chair.
Definitely.
Thank you. There's a consultation going on. Do you want to talk about that consultation in the safer neighborhoods? Does the MT want to tell us about that at this stage?
The public space protection order.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think maybe some of it crosses over with the next paper as well.
We can do it now or we can do the next paper. Okay, because of time is pressing, okay, we take that in the next paper. And one thing I want to get, because I know when you were responding to one of the questions, you mentioned that you have 13 new officers on the street. And then another time you said you have 12. Is it 13 plus 12, 25 new officers or just?
Two separate teams, Councillor or Chair. Sorry, I'll probably speak.
Okay, so
two separate teams.
Two separate teams, but they're new officers now. Is it?
So 13 from the additional contract that you just was referring to, the Kingdom contract, and 12. So it's an additional 6 officers in the 2 teams, 5 of each with management.
For the antisocial behaviour team.
Antisocial behaviour.
There were two different teams.
And the reason I asked that, because one of the objectives of this particular paper and exercise was because we talked about increased resource, and just to get a feel of the level of resource that is increased from, and obviously over the next 4 years.
Yeah.
To enforce. But do you have a level where you think you're going to be reaching at, or you let the service demand?
I think, Chair, if I'm honest, I think for the antisocial behaviour side, for what I think we need at the moment, and realistically in this financial climate, I think we're probably there with 12 officers. I wouldn't have bothered going with that number if I didn't think that was right. Speaking to my colleagues and going back to Councillor Godfrey's question about looking at management to staffing ratio and in capacity with our cases, I think we're right with 12 officers in ASB. We'll always review that and we'll look at it as the cases go forward. On the enforcement side, the enforcement capacity we have of 13 LAS officers is that littering enforcement, which is really the fly tipping littering issue is a massive issue. So that's why we've looked to employ that extra enhanced resource there. The bit of work I need to do is looking at the structures I have and making that more intelligence focused, just making that a better responsive service. If I'm very honest, I don't see us increasing many more officers over the next few years. I want to get them in now so we start to reduce the crime.
Right. So basically what you're saying to us, when you came in with a depleted stuff in terms of officers numbers, and you have looked at that and decided that there should be some more officers. And what you're saying to us now with the officer core or the officer numbers that you've got is the officers that you think is sufficient to deliver the model of service that you want to deliver to make our streets safe in terms of enforcement, etc.
Almost, Chair, almost. I think we're a long way there in the first 3 to 4 months of a 4-year manifesto commitment. Yeah.
You would take that as almost complete. So therefore, give it 3, 6, 9, 12 months. We expected to see in terms of antisocial behaviour, depletion and so on, and noise and so on. We expect to see an improvement in all of that. And as we go along, as they embed, etc.
Fair challenge.
Yeah. Okay. So because of time, I need to. So in terms of this particular item, safety and enforcement, we have been told is that in 2019 there was a review. In that review, recommended that reduction in the number of officers. That has been reversed now, and I'm pleased to note that the lead member mentioned that part of that was the recommendation. Pleased to hear that. So reverse that. Also, I get it what the member, Councillor Lee Parker said. Finance is challenging for all of us, and she's trying to do the best that she can with the finance. One of the things that I wanted to ask, but we'll ask it another time, in terms of, do we know there's a budget wrong, and if there's any growth? That question would come eventually, maybe be a written question in terms of growth bids to do what you need to do. Please, although it was mentioned that by Xmas, by Christmas, there would be out of service, but I know you correct on the advice of the lead member to say that you're working and you would like to see something in place by then. So we get that. So at least by Christmas, February going on, we expect to see some progress being made in in that direction. And from the police, in terms of the neighborhood, things that I got from that is that three things that the neighborhood says that they want: trust and confidence. And I suppose trust and confidence in the police. Okay. Long-term problem solving, I think that would be resting in our lap again. So to for the public to have that trust and confidence, and for you to be solving problems and professionalism. And that is an important one. Obviously, they expect a professional service and a professional police force. So those are the three things, and you're giving us assurance that you'll be working on those three priorities. So, and hopefully, again, maybe not to the next meeting, but in the next one after, sometime in the new year, when we revisit these, Roger, we want to find out where we are in terms of these three priorities, etc. And again, in terms of growth bid, if the member is going to be getting any more money to do any of this stuff that she needs to do to make sure that our streets are even now. So thank you very much. Unless there's anything else, I'm going to move on to the next agenda item. So thank you for your participation, everyone, in this agenda item. I take it that nobody's going to be leaving, and you are going to be staying. Okay. Right. So item 8 on the agenda. We have got some papers, and what the paper seeks to do is to set out and update the new current crime data position and actions undertaken for the priorities of NURM Community Safety Partnership. It provides update on the community members on activities of the partnership for this year, 2022-2023. Can I ask Councillor Lee Parkway and our team to lead in this? So, Councillor, do you have any opening remarks?
Chair, I just given the time, I think it may be a better use of time that we move to questions. But what I do want to just say that the Community Safety Partnership Board is an extremely important board when it comes to the overall issues around community safety within the borough that we live. We have some factors that we need to be very mindful of in regards to the way in which NURM is, in regards to crime statistics and so on and so forth. So I will pass it over to members in order for them to ask the probing questions that they may feel appropriate.
Thank you. So what I do recommend, therefore, is actually the leading question for the viewing public. We are talking about the partnership, but the public may not know what is we mean by this. So can I ask one of you to summarize quickly what we identify in this? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If I go ahead. So the Crime and Disorder Act 1998 basically mandated that essentially we would come together as partners to essentially, I guess in a way, work with the police who already had a mandate to investigate and reduce crime. So there is a duty on authorities that we need to have a community safety partnership, and that brings in our health colleagues, probation colleagues, fire service colleagues, police colleagues as main partners, and a range of other colleagues. We have representatives from safer neighbourhood boards and the communities in that as well. There's a number of key colleagues, and then we will represent right across the authorities, a number of directorates involved. But essentially, there was a duty and an onus on us as partners to come together to produce yearly strategic assessments. So we look at our crime yearly. There is an onus and duty on us to have a 3-year strategy going forward. So we have a community safety strategy, and often we can develop annual plans off the back of that. But we have, and I've through the paper we've highlighted the 3-year strategy. There are a number of other mandated duties on a partnership. We have to have essentially a community safety partnership is responsible for coordinating that aspect of reducing reoffending for a borough. So a borough needs to come together, look at reducing reoffending. We have responsibility for commissioning and undertaking domestic homicide reviews when we have domestic homicides. And there is a new one that will be coming in very shortly. I'm debating with colleagues across London, MOPAC, the BRU and the Home Office about there is a new Similar to something like the prevent duty, where we all have a duty around reducing radicalisation, there is a new violence duty coming in. That there will be an expectation that partners in authority or in boroughs, partners will come together to work together closely to reduce violent crime, and that will most likely come to sit under community safety partnerships as opposed to children's or adults boards or health and wellbeing, because it's that cross-age violence piece. So we'll look to sit under us, but essentially we have to come together to reduce crime as partners.
Thank you very much. That was also, I think, useful for the new members who haven't been on this commission before. I'm not aware of the service. So thank you for the partnership. Thank you very much indeed. Now, Councillor Shanti.
Thank you. Hi, according to page number 46, we can see Neom was ranked highest in London offences above the MPS average. So I think we are getting this figure mainly because we can see on page number 47, most crime, violence and antisocial behaviour has been happening in Stratford, East Ham and Upton Park. Previously, you have answered that you don't specify any number of the police for each ward. So if you do not specify number of the police for the hotspots, how can you tackle those situations?
Thank you, Councillor.
Sorry. So just to be clear, Councillor Shantu, just in relation to the question that you asked, we didn't specify, we don't give numbers for the officers that are going into wards. We specifically talked about enforcement officers. There are officers of the local authority. However, the police do have officers going into those wards. There is an extremely robust team in the Stratford area that looks after the issues around Stratford and the police around the issues of the whole of that Stratford space. So in regards to officers, Metropolitan Police officers, I would move over to my colleagues who can give you a better answer in regards to the tasking of officers into those spaces. But in regards to the question that was in regards to enforcement officers, we don't do ward-specific enforcement officers.
So my question was not that. My question was, I know you don't do that. My question was, if you don't have, then how can you prevent those crimes from those three wards?
Well, okay, to be clear, Councillor, so I think you're getting the question mixed up. The police have not said they don't have officers in those wards. The question wasn't posed to the police officers. It was posed to us as the enforcement. So we don't have enforcement-specific officers into those spaces, but I know, because I see them, there is police officers as well as safer neighbourhood teams based in all of those wards that you just mentioned. So the Chair, forgive me.
And can I, maybe what might be helpful, Councillor, crime-related stuff is the police, and civil-related stuff it's the council. So our enforcement stuff, like spitting, site tipping, those kind of stuff, and dropping litter is mostly us as a council, and what the enforcement officer is going to do. Any other crime-related stuff, arrests and so on, that would be for the police.
Yeah, but that's what I'm asking.
And so therefore the
asking
question,
them.
so I suppose the question should be directed to the police if you're talking about crime. And the member is correct. The police didn't tell us in terms of their how they deploy and so on. But
any of you please can take the question if you think it's, yeah.
I'll take the question. So what we know that most of the crime within Newham is concentrated around the Stratford, that sort of footprint area. That's not to say those issues, we know there's issues around West Ham, we know other places, Canning Town as well. But we have within that area of Stratford, we have a dedicated town centre team, and those officers are there, approximately 25 officers, and they work with the Business Crime Reduction Partnership, and they're proactive, and the often see the vehicles about actually making sure that they're doing their utmost to keep that area safe. What we have is within every ward, we have ward teams with minimum of 2 officers and a PCSO. And what we do is we come together, we look at where the actual crimes are happening. We look at the pattern and we provide a response that is bespoke to the particular issues within that ward, because we know that all the wards have different areas, different issues. So in terms of what we're doing within Newham, I personally feel that we're doing an awful lot of positive work in terms of tackling violence. Now, doesn't change the fact that Newham is still the first highest in London, and that's not to say that we just say we're happy and we stop. We don't, not at all. We're going to keep working. We're going to keep working on this. But trust me, this is an absolute priority for us, and we are actually working very, very hard to make Newham as safe as it possibly is.
Can I just
And there's one other thing to said on that as well, sorry.
Yeah.
Even to the point as well, I'm looking at as well neighbourhood teams changing their shift patterns, so we have officers out later at night, because we know that actually people tend not to be fighting too much during the day, but the fear of crime comes in around when the nights come down. So that's again, it's just we're constantly working. What can we do more? So if hand over to mix up.
I just want to make the point, you mentioned Stratford, and I think it's important to get it in perspective. Stratford in terms of footfall, in terms of...
Mentioned Stratford, East Ham and Upton Park.
I'm just going to give a perspective in terms of why crime levels are considered high. And it is the same to a lesser extent within East Ham. But Stratford, in terms of footfall, that station alone is number one in the United Kingdom in terms of footfall. People coming in and out of the area for a number of reasons, largely Westfield, the Olympic Park, etc., etc. Now, unfortunately, with that amount of people who have more recorded crime or more opportunity in terms of percentage-wise, in terms of crime. So that's why the levels are high. But it's important to understand that it's an extremely busy area. And as I said, it's number one in terms of footfall in the whole of the United Kingdom.
Yes.
Okay, right. Okay, so we need to move on. So come to Lois, then Maris, then Imam, then Faith. Okay.
Okay, guys, page 56, page 57. There's a lot of stuff on here which is great. Big time action plan. The spaces action plan, domestic use strategy. When are we going to see them? And perhaps this is something you guys can take away and get back to us with some dates, because...
Could you ask the question again? Sorry, I didn't hear.
When are we going to see these strategies?
They're all in train. The strategies, so the hate crime strategy is going to be launched next week.
When's it?
Next week.
Next week. The safer spaces is an action plan that comes off of that. The strategy around women and girls is be launched with an event and an app in December. So everything will be before the end of the year.
Councillor Lee Parkway, thank you for a very comprehensive and useful answer. As Councillor Lee Parkway was so on top of her game, can I ask another quick question?
So I will come back to you.
So in page 44, 4.5, the community safety partnership is to produce a strategy every 3 years. I could be misremembering it, but I do remember in July meeting day you said that we did have a strategy, but it wasn't finalised yet. So I could be misremembering. Has it been finalised and will we be able to have access to it?
Yes, Councillor, apologies if you haven't had already, and I thought we had sent it around. It was ratified at the Community Safety Partnership in July and to the Cabinet Accountability Forum, and it should be out there. We're currently, as it's on the website, yeah, currently as we've done with the hate crime strategy for next week, we're trying to make it look more community accessible. So we're trying to sort of prettify it a bit more as well to make it read slightly better. But absolutely, it exists, and I've taken excerpts of the action plan directly from that for this. So I can ensure again it goes around to all members if it hasn't.
We can do that.
Already.
I'll take that as an action.
So I do have just two very, I would say, simple questions.
Because I didn't allow the member before. Come to him. Sorry.
So ask for a question to the police. In point number 5.1 and 5.2 on page number
Can you speak up a bit, Cass?
So page number 45 and 46, point number 5 and 5.2. There's various data been given, but I can't see anything related to drug-related crime over over there. And please forgive me if that has already been mentioned there, but I can't see that. So my question related to that, why that is not there and is it not reported?
I don't know.
Shall I come in? It's not recorded, councillor, as a specific crime. So we measure, and again, there's another table I didn't put in here, but I brought it to scrutiny last year as well, and we look at it on a regular basis. It breaks down all the crimes, and it then breaks down all the hate crimes and violent crime further. Drug-related offences, it's basically, it sits across all those. It's not an offence in itself, I believe, in that way. It's not recorded as an offence in the crime type data in that way.
I mean, to be fair, we would have the data on in terms of crime for drug supply, drug possession, but I would need to go away and supply that to you. But that's something that Gary probably hasn't got access to.
Yeah.
We do have access to that.
This is publicly recorded, so you can access this as well. We make it simpler by putting it into this form.
And I think as well, what you've got to be mindful of with the statistics is the more proactive we are in terms of actually finding drugs and looking for drugs, then the more the crimes go up. And it's rather interesting as well. You look there as well, knife crime has gone up. So again, I know we've done quite a few operations around knife arches. Obviously, you know, the stop and search gone on one thing and another, but the more active the police are looking for knives, the more knives are going to find. And then you find the crime has gone up. And people say, oh, how terrible this is. Look at all this knife crime going up. Well, actually, it's actually potentially a good news story because we've taken knives off the street.
If I may, Chair, just one very last point. Sorry, Councillor, just to hopefully alleviate maybe some of your concerns, highlighting that point. There is something that's going to be coming out shortly, and I'm working very closely with Alex and Mick's colleague, Jodie Tuff, the head of CID, and the crime side detective. There is an expectation that all authorities will have, you know, as we all like to have a board. There is an expectation that we'll have a combating drugs partnership going forward, and every borough will be expected to have this. It will sit primarily as a senior response officer under directors of public health in each area, but it's mandated that we need to sit as community safety colleagues, as police colleagues, health colleagues, as you can imagine as well. And we look at both sides. If we look at busting that organised crime, county lines, drug side of supply and the criminal aspect of it, but also that treatment and supply side and the preventative side of it over here as well. So there will be a whole focus partnership on drugs going forward from probably, I'd say, most boroughs are looking at implementing it now, as in doing the early work, probably from January onwards, I would say January 23, we'll start to have a board that will look very specifically at drugs. Clearly, we'll all have a part to play, and the community safety partnership is an important part of that, but it will be very specifically looking at drugs.
And I have a very quick question.
On that.
Yeah.
Follow-up question, Chair, but
It's a supplementary.
Yeah.
But a new one, okay.
thank you, Chair. So I'm giving an example. When we are visiting to residents or residents coming to our surgery, they are mentioning that they are reporting drug-related crime. So in that sense, are we not registering it? And also to the police, I'll say that I have raised a few drug crime-related issues with the council. The council has come back and said that we have to report it to the police. The residents have to report it to the police. And then when we go back to the residents with this answer, unfortunately, the residents are feeling that council is not doing more about this one, whereas it is police-related issue and must be dealt by the police. And the residents thinks I feel there is a trust deficit with the residents and with the council because of this issue.
And that's something I can probably answer as well. We can certainly look at that. And if there are any specific examples, I'll go and look at those specific examples. But I'll give you from my understanding. So when it comes to drugs, we'll often get people reporting and saying there's a group of young people smoking cannabis. Now, from a point of view, do we actually know they are smoking cannabis? Is that what somebody's just saying? So that will often come in an antisocial behaviour report. If the officers can come down there, if we can gather evidence that that's been taking place, then yes, we will obviously make a crime report of that and we'll chase it up. Invariably, what you find is the young people are moving very quickly. By the time we got there, by the time we've gone, that's moved on. When it comes to things like this, I think we need to look at it in a different way, and we need to look at it, on the one hand, the education at schools of young people, treating that as a health concern because it is dangerous for the health, but also just look at it from that designing out. You know, why is it that we have repeated calls to this location for this specific issue? And that's where people, I think, lose confidence because they say, you know, I rang up, You know, sometimes a lot of people say, well, the police didn't come. Well, often we do come, but people don't see us, you know, because we've gone back inside the houses. And that's what we need to get into, is actually where it's repeatedly happening, and that's what our teams do and should be doing. It's scanning, looking, saying, actually, we've got a repeated problem there. And that's what I said to my teams. You're the people, we need to be saying, why do we keep getting calls for that? And then we need to look at it and say, what can we do around that location, around that area? What dynamics can we change? Because the police officer can't be there 24 hours a day. So we need to look at it in a different way. We need to try and design that out with that security, lighting, whatever we do, CCTV, the youth shelter, youth club, mosquito.
And just to answer specific, Councillor, on your point about, you know, you're dealing with that issue now, residents are telling you now and you're not getting that response. I mean, certainly I'll go away and take a look at that. What I would have said, and probably should have said at the start when you said about there's nothing drugs related doesn't feature in how we look at the crime offences recorded in crime volumes. We absolutely have a breakdown of ASB, as Alex was saying, antisocial behaviours recorded through the council as well. Some of that will be, there's adults smoking in the corridors. We'll record that as an ASB issue. We'll link you with police colleagues, etc. as well, where I think the confusion comes from. And we do need to get better at it. And one of the things that Councillor Packer wants to drive is probably a member session at some stage where we sit with police and talk about what we do, what police do, and where our powers differentiate. And we do work really close together. Whilst I accept the chair's point, there's kind of civil and criminal, we do get involved in crime as well. And it's just explanation that's quite good. But essentially, where I think there is some pushback and some blurring of the lines is you will get, you know, if you get reports of people smoking cannabis, it could be ASB, we'll still report to police colleagues obviously as well, depending on what that is. But often we will get reports in that are people drug dealing through the police matter. It's an arrest matter. And I think, again, as Alex said, you know, police might have turned up, he might be gone, it might have missed, etc. So I think I get your frustration, the residents' frustration, absolutely. We can look at that, and we do look at it together on a regular basis. And again, it's just as long as it's reported, all the time reported, we can build a profile, we can build a picture, and we look to respond. But yeah, apologies for the frustration.
Let me then try to.
Hi. Oh, sorry. That's fine.
It's just a suggestion. I don't know if you've noticed it. Most of the streets within Newham, they are more organized now. They have lead, they have WhatsApp group, they talk to each other. Do you think working with them or working with the lead is going to be helpful? I mean, I know you have partnership in all ways, but they know their streets more than we do. Like you said, police can't be there 24 hours. But if you work with them, get information from them, it might be very helpful.
That happens. In essence, that happens.
Okay, thank you. That's a quick one. Right. Sure.
Hi, my question, it's not question, quite similar to my colleague about the drug dealing. It's illegal thing without authorizations. So residents normally come to us instead of going to police because they feel to speak to their elected representative is more hard connections instead of going to police. So they're actually looking for much better service from the council. So I'm just requesting, can you not work closely with police to deliver that clear picture of what we can do for residents?
Well, we work together, and in fact, actually, because we're doing some work at the moment on the analytical products, because the council have a lot of data, we've got a lot of data, and we're working to how can we, and we spoke about the other day, the data store that we have, to actually get that information. But what I will say is it's really, really important that people report it. It is really important, because if people report it, then it becomes crime-based in our system. They can report things as well anonymously through Crime Stoppers. But if they can please report. They don't have to say, I don't want my information given, but please report it. Because if you don't report it and don't tell us, we don't see it. And the other thing as well I would say is, you know, for me, part of the space that we need to do is we need to do more about being in the community, to be more visible and recognised, to build up those relationships so that people do have trust and they will speak to local officers. You know, we do have residents who will say to us, you know, we believe this is happening at this address, and then we'll go and get a warrant from the court, drug dealing, and we'll go into the house and we'll do it. And in fact, I would say, you know, the vast majority of our warrants that are executed for drug supply is coming from residents who are telling us and saying, and there's things that we can do. I could tell you, not in this public forum, but actually there's ways of us to check and see actually, is there any value in us actually progressing that? And then the other thing I was going to say as well is often, and please, if I could ask you to ask for me feedback, Often people say, well, we never see the police. Trust me, we are out and about. And what I'm asking officers to do is to be in those sort of more community events. If you've got community events, please let us know. Be in those spaces like the supermarkets, be at the times people are at, because this is not the 1970s. And, you know, people now, you know, whereas 1970s people have nothing better to do than look out of the window, twitching curtains. Nowadays, people have 200 TV channels, on-demand television, YouTube, Spotify, internet, web-based, you know, whenever people are not living their lives outside the home. You've seen all these closures of pubs and bars, all closing because people are not going out to pubs anymore, because actually the home's a nice environment and people are not living their lives outside the window. So we are out there. We are genuinely out there, but please report, please let us know. And personally, again, we get anonymous reports, we can't get back into that person again, but we respect whatever people
Chair, if I can, for one, very quickly, I'll be very brief. And I suppose from a council perspective, from your challenge, councillor, you know, we work every day with these, you know, I mean, we meet 2 or 3 times a week, you know, we speak about everything. But I think some of the key areas where, you know, Councillor Packway, we were rushing to get here tonight because we were at a safer neighbourhood panel, where there's a number of community representatives and about 6 police officers, you know, and talking through the issues in that area, and we'll support more of those. But I think it's about getting, and police colleagues are building those panels back up in each of the wards, and it's about trying to promote those to residents to come to, but also our local assemblies, having police colleagues at our local assembly meetings, so we can tell people what we're doing. But one of the things we need to get better at, and we are working to get better at, is about our communications, getting newsletters out there, telling people about good news, telling people what we're doing, so that even those who don't come to those panels, those who have busy lives and they can't make it for whatever reason, we try to get out there, either through social media, leaflets in the papers, whatever, or bulletins, that we're telling people what we are doing, and at least then we can be challenged through that mechanism as well. But I accept the challenge. We're trying to do more.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to now come back to Godfrey, then John.
Thank you, Chair. So from page 49 onwards, you've got a table how for a lot of the outcomes, we're talking about things like increased feelings of safety, increased confidence of women, the nature of hate crime, and a few as we go. And to be fair, it is mainly on the how we deliver public safety, how we deliver safety in public spaces. What are the kind of measures that you're going to use to assess whether you've achieved those outcomes? Because they seem a little bit nebulous.
Yeah. So some of them, I'm sorry, Councillor, I said some of these, and again, these are high level actions and high level perceived outcomes or aims that we would want to receive at a high level. There will be plans that will sit under these. So, for example, the hate crime strategy sits under with very specific aims and objectives and outcomes that we want. We will have it in the sex working strategy. We'll have it on the open space strategy with police. There are a range of things that we will pitch down to. So I appreciate these are probably a bit more nebulous and a bit more sort of open. There are, to get to some of those, so where we are getting increased feelings of safety, obviously we've got things like the resident survey. We'll have specific surveys we'll do on pieces of work. We will be analysing, if I just take, it's easy to pick the women's safety one because we're about to launch an app, but you know, on hate crime, we've arranged, and we've already launched, and we're officially launching it next week. We've had a soft launch the last 2 months, hate crime third-party reporting site online. So we will review the information that comes in there. When we launch our women's safety app, we'll have the ability to review the traffic on that, what we see on that. The harder age, one final thing I say is the harder age stuff, which obviously I haven't probably put in there, and it's probably maybe something I need to focus on. There are very, very clearly then those, both the hard targets, the actual crime KPIs coming down. So those indicators we talked about, hate crime, does that come down? Once against women come down? There are trust and confidence measures the police have to measure. So we'll be looking to see, has trust and confidence gone up? Confidence on the police gone up? Confidence, police confidence in the authority gone up? So there's a range of measures we can do that.
Yeah, just very quickly before I ask the supplementary, can you just very quickly describe what those trust and confidence measures are?
So from a police point of view, I can. So the Mayor's Office Policing and Crime, they take sort of the lead for the trust and confidence measures. And there's a range of questions they ask. And they'll ask victims of crime, they have panel people, and they'll ask something like, you know, do you know who your local officer is? Do you know also how to contact your local ward officer? Do you think the police in this area are doing a good job? You know, and there's about 4 or 5 questions that are asked, and they're measured every quarter, and we get that feedback back. Now, it's no secret that in the Metropolitan Police Service and the London area, we are at a record low confidence.
Yeah.
Which is, and I'm just even giving an example, just in something very simple.
I don't necessarily need an example, but I would very quickly ask, if that data, if it's existing, can we access that?
That's available publicly. There's something called the London Data Store, which is totally open, and also as well there's a more detailed portal which we're in touch with Gary about. We're going to get the analyst access to. But what I'm trying to do on the other side is really trying to work it backwards and think, what does it mean? So I'll give an example. We've had a reorganisation. We are now part of any North East PCU. Now, if you live, if you live in Stratford, if you live in West Ham, what is North East PCU? Do Tesco say we are branch 47821? It doesn't mean anything. So it's to try and think about our branding, think how we communicate with people, and make sure that people know this is safer neighbourhoods. This is your local ward team. If the mayor's office want to call us, whatever they want to call us, because X, Y, Z doesn't matter. But for the public, we need to be.
Okay, and that's fine. But one last question, which is, given these metrics, is the perception of safety more important than safety itself? Because that's what a lot of these metrics seem to show.
They are equally important.
Yeah.
Equally, because the fear of crime damages people's lives. We've got people who don't want to go out to the street when it's like this. That is appalling, So for me, the reality is very, very important. We've got a job to do as well. We've got to pass on the good news. Really important we share the good news and we actually say where we are doing well. Things like hate crime, we're not having those successes. But equally, the fear of crime for me is as equal as the real crime.
Thank you for your discretion, Chair.
Thank you. And John, and then Amen.
So I'm just going to refer you to page 49. In focus increase women's safety, engage with women in the borough around their safety concerns through women focus group surveys and community conversations to establish locations of concern and enable effective targeting of resources. One of the issues that reading this comes to mind is that certain communities are called hard to reach for a reason. So certain communities may not be accessible to surveys or may not be community minded, may not go to community events. And I'm just interested in what measures, strategies you have to access these communities or specific women who are hard to reach that won't necessarily be accessible through these methods.
Yeah, I'll pass to Mick in a minute because I know he's done a lot on the police side. But from our side of this, and we've done some of this work already. So obviously we've come up with this plan, but we've been doing this work for the past year, engaging women's groups. So we've done a number of online. First of all, we've gone online. There's some people have accessed online, but obviously we've seen a lot of people. We've done 2 completely women-focused sessions where Councillor Packer was there, and Mayor was there, a number of women across a number of communities. I think we had 120 people on both occasions, just talking about their issues, their concerns. We've gone out to faith groups. I've been working very closely with the Muslim Sisters, with the New Muslim Forum, just walking around their areas. They weren't hard to reach in the slightest. They were knocking on the door all the time. So, we've through the faith groups, we've had a number of faith leaders come to us to tell us that they've done surveys internally within their congregations, and we're picking those out. One of the things we have in our plan and again, as I said, there's a range of things we've been doing like that, a range of surveys as well, and talking to various departments and the key individual networks they have. But one of the areas that we are looking to undertake around this, as well as launching our women's safety app, where hopefully as a free app it will get out there. Again, you need to have a smartphone, but if we get it out there, and a lot of people do now, and certainly younger girls do, is that they can tell us things either through the police or anonymously through that. But also one of the areas where we're looking to commission a short piece of work by an organisation that's done some work in, I think, around Kensington and Chelsea, where they've been out doing some independent surveys and reviews of women's groups. And they've got out and they've gone through various women's aid networks, etc. as well. And they've met various groups. So we're looking to engage those as well to do a specific piece of work in Newham, again, which is independent of us. We'll give them a steer, but they've got the skills to engage the community. So there are some of the areas we're certainly doing. But if I ask Mick to jump in, he can maybe tell you what police have been doing.
Well, I think it's very exhaustive.
1 minute to jump in there.
Sorry, Mick.
Very quickly, I think it was a very exhaustive answer. So, there are a number of apps out there where people can anonymously, it's not just the one that Gary's talking about that's going to come on board shortly with Newham. There are other apps, NetWide one, Street Safe is out there for the whole of the Metropolitan Police. And they are, and people can go on that and identify where they feel unsafe in any particular area within the BCU, and then we respond to that. You will find our officers out on regularly, several times a week, in what we know to be hotspot areas. For example, Stratford being one. They engage with people coming from the station, with local businesses, about how we can improve safety and how we engage people coming and using Westfield. And making sure that people who work within that environment as well are safeguarded. So this is an ongoing piece. We work with the Olympic Park, the local LCC, I can't remember what it's called now, London Community, I can't remember what it's called, but the
LLDC.
LLDC. So we have ongoing forums, and this goes on all the time. Schools is another important thing. Our schools officers are working with the safeguarding leads in every single school to encourage people to come forward about where they feel vulnerable, and misogyny unfortunately starts very young these days. And there are a number of projects going on in relation to how we can work with charities and encourage people to come forward to educate, because of that's unfortunately where it starts. On top of that, we've got licensing, and we've got a number of work with Angela and Clive, which is the one for men as well. And so that's an ongoing piece there as well. And we have regular sessions in terms of improving understanding of what the responsibilities of premises are.
Thank you. I think that's the detailed answer, and I recognise Councillor Lee Parkway.
Thank you, Chair. I guess for a lot of actually what's been asked in relation to the women's safety piece, I think it would be remiss of me not to address actually the safeguarding duties that we all have as elected members. That's a big way in which we obtain information from residents that are hard to reach, as you put it. So, you know, the fact that we use our own spaces and places in order to be able to get that information and pass it on to the relevant agency is really important. But more so also just in relation to the safeguarding duties of all those partner organisations within the borough that we work closely with. We're never ever, our doors are never ever closed to any kind of safeguarding issue or issue of safety. So there is always an open opportunity to be able to feed in information, no matter how that comes, to us, the local authority, and also to the police. And we gather that information and pass it on according to what the level of need is.
Thank you.
Question. Most of the question Councillor Morris have covered, but I will just ask additionally to it. You have mentioned that how do you engage in terms of various community groups and faith groups, but do we have any communication strategy in terms of when Councillor Deepak has said that the strategy that you are going to implement within the coming months? So do you have any sort of communication strategy that this is what we are going to do in the coming months for women's safety, for other issues that we are going to deal with?
Essentially, yes, Councillor, because they will sit specifically under it. So we've got one for hate crime, because one of the key priorities of hate crime is actually getting people to report hate crime. It's hugely underreported. So we've got a communication plan about how we're going to do that. Similarly, we'll have one around the sex work, but similarly for this open spaces, women's safety. Again, I don't have all the detail here, and some of that's been worked up, but absolutely, they're some of the key bits. We just don't have people telling us what's happening, and we need to find that out. And that will range from what we do around social media, all the stuff we've just talked about now as well. And one of the key things I suppose I would say, and again, it'd be remiss of me not to say it here, that obviously We have a significant problem with domestic abuse in this borough. We've got very high levels of domestic abuse. As a whole, we've just launched a new strategy to tackle domestic abuse. That covers, again, all the areas of violence against women and girls, and it covers this women's safety piece. We've tried to focus this with police colleagues very specifically on this public spaces issue, but there will be a whole range of work that we do that I suppose it complements some of the work we're doing, where there's a lot of work being done in GP surgeries, pharmacies, those safe spaces for women that are already around domestic abuse, and have really a lot of work we put into that, working with people like Refuge, Women's Aid, Women's Solace Aid, people like that. So we will, I suppose, jump on the back of some of that learning as well and try to do the same. So again, a lot of the communications work we've done around domestic abuse, whether it be special codes on pens, whether it be special code words in shops, code words in pharmacies, things like that, things to look out for, training up colleagues. Again, like the Ask Angela, the Women's Safety Charter, there's a whole range of work that we'll have underneath. But the short answer is they will be under each of our plans. We'll have a communication strategy, and happy to be challenged on that.
And the only thing I would add to that is that I'm looking to make sure that the minutes of the Community Safety Partnership Board is actually published online. So that will then give you the opportunity to see what's coming up. And you know, anyone that knows me here knows that I'm very much passionate about it being everybody's business. We all have a part to play here. This is not just a one size fits all. It's just our responsibility. It's everybody's responsibility. We're elected in post for a reason. And a big part of that is about making sure that we get out the information to our most vulnerable residents, but all residents that may need that information as and when they need it. But that goes back to the statement that Gary spoke about earlier in regards to those meetings that I set up with all elected members in regards to their vicinity, their ward, and what their issues were within their spaces. That was very much about understanding the demographics and understanding the challenges that you had within your walls and how we could better help you to get the information out there. What we will be doing in the coming months, and as I've got lots of things to do, I'm not going to promise you a time, but what I will say we will be doing at some point in the coming months is we will be providing you guys, along with data from the police and other partners, information via a newsletter, which you can then send out to your residents about what it is that is going on in the local authority. I do appreciate that not all residents are tapped into technology, so therefore they may miss.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I have to move on now. I'm sorry, because I haven't asked any question.
Just a suggestion, not a question.
Okay, a suggestion, a quick one.
So, my suggestion to the council and the police, if that makes sense, is in terms of communication, and you have mentioned that police do engage with the people coming out of the stations and all that, but sometimes the police are in uniform, people hesitate to communicate or, let's say, put out the message. So can we do something in terms of putting out booths on high streets or something where we encourage residents for having a communication with us, and we can tell them what sort of strategy we are implementing in the coming days or what we are doing at present?
We could look into that.
Okay, thank you for the suggestion. And so
we could look into it.
You noted the suggestion. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
But we would like to know if the suggestion will be considered or not.
Make a note that the suggestion that we will, it would be in the minutes.
Yes, please.
In terms of on page 45, in terms of the diagrams, the picture here that we can see, new crime in Newham, that bit is useful in terms of me understanding, because I can see numbers and I can see percentages. Makes sense to me. Then we go down to flag offences, weapon crime, etc., and I can see percentages and I cannot see numbers. And it's beginning to lose me, because percentage of what? See, so therefore, it would be helpful if we can get the same way that you have crime in Newham, you have the percentages, 10%, and then we have some numbers there. So that would be helpful if you can do that.
I'll take that away, Chair. That's me, and we tried to present it infographically for ease. But yeah, I accept the consistency.
Presenting it graphically, it's easier for us to have this thing, and if we could just put a number with that percentage, it gives us some magnitude. And that might be helpful for us is if you put a key, the number of residents in Newham, the number of youngsters. So at least when we see knife crime, for instance, and we naturally assume, and maybe it's the wrong assumption, that it might be the youngsters up to a certain age. This is the number of youngsters and then the percentage. It help us to be more informed as really what is going on. I mean, that just have to be a key that you leave there time after time. It's a standard feature, so we see the population of young, the number of young people, number of older people, number of women, number of men, you know, that kind of thing. We have that data, so just get them it and put them in there and just leave them it there.
Yeah, I can certainly look at that, Chair. The way crime is recorded as well in two ways. It's not really broken down in age in that way, but crime is recorded as per incidents and incidents per 100,000. So you could show, and what we've done, I think it's personally the most professional and moral thing to do is to show the number of incidents. But if we were to show it as per 1,000 population, we sink back down in the numbers. We're not quite as high. We've shown incidents there. We can show a key, Chair, and I can go in and review it. I think it's difficult to show it against age. I know we can say the amount of people in the community, but we can't then say where we rank in London.
Run age, but if we have that key there in terms, but we can talk about this outside of here.
We can't. The only thing I'd say is we won't have it for other boroughs, so we can't show comparisons.
Okay, so a quick question. Most of them seems to be going down, which is good news. And what politicians tend to do, and I'm sure Councillor Lee Park is different, whether they come in for 1 day or they come in for 2 days. Once the figures are positive, they take the credit for it. So well done, Councillor.
Thank you.
The figures are going down. However, knife crime seems to be going up.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of work I know has been done with knife crime. So why do you think it's keep going up?
So no, if
I think that's a police question.
Yeah, I feel that when we look at what is actually knife crime, you know, it all depends on definition, but most of the knife crime is actually young people that have been found with a knife. Now, when we actually begin to look at young people, there's various reasons why young people may carry a knife, but actually one of the biggest reasons why young people carry a knife is through fear. You know, we know that. We know young people can be quite frightened. We have various interventions. So we have interventions in the schools where our schools officers will find young people with knives, and that will be picked up on here. We'll deal with often with other interventions that try not to criminalise that young person. We also do operations around, particularly around those railway station transport hubs. Stratford is obviously the examples often given. Quite regularly, we will have knife arches, we'll have proactive operations where we're out looking for weapons, and stop and search, which I know is always very sensitive. But again, one of the main drivers of stop and search is for the weapon. So the more that we find, the more weapons we take off the streets, the more the knife offences goes up. So often people say there's lies, damn lies and statistics. You know, we can interpret them, you know, however you wish to. My own view and my own belief is the reason why that, particularly when it comes to knife offences, is because that relates directly to the knife crimes, the knives that we take off the street.
Thank you. So that would be the last question. I'm sorry, it's 4 minutes to 9. We haven't moved standing order, so I would have to be rounding up. And this is what happens at every meeting. We can go on and on and on. So we have to cut it at a certain time. Thank you, colleagues, for your participation. So in terms of the partnership, we know that it's a collective of bodies, the NHS, health, the probation service, the police, the council itself, and others who come together to make certain that there is a reduction and there's a strategy in terms of reducing crime, and that is what this is all about. Working. One of the things that just came out clearly, I think you tried to ask but it's about working together. And by working together in a collective and constructive way, we can together reduce crime. We know that there's going to be the 8 crimes, the strategies coming up, you said next week, isn't it?
Yep.
So we look forward to the rolling out of that, and hopefully that will improve a lot of the residents in Newry. And you also assure us that you acknowledge that your comms is not good communication, and you're going to be working on that to make certain that the people can be better informed in terms of what you're doing, because sometimes the good things are happening and it's not being always communicated. Perception of crime, you mentioned that. Sometimes crime in reality is not there, but fair, if we could communicate that more often and readily, people might feel safer and may not give the neighborhood such a bad name as sometimes they do, without the reality being there. Okay, so thank you all for coming. Thank you, colleagues. Now, the date of our next meeting, I'll move on to the next agenda item now. The date of our next meeting is the 8th of December. So is that noted?
Yes, noted, yes.
So at this stage, I must thank both my colleagues on the scrutiny benches and the witnesses, Councillor Lee Parkway and your colleagues for attending. And it's now 1 minute to 9. So thank you all very much.